Welcome to On the Bauble Podcast, episode 26. I'm your host, Sebastian J. Wada, and with me is my co-host, Yuki Lee Bender. Today, we're going to be talking about the Premiere Play announcement that happened half a week ago. And before we go into that then, how was your week, Yuki?
My week hasn't been too bad. There's not a lot of like flesh and blood major events going on, so I've been sort of taking it easy. Played one armory on Azalea, which was quite fun. Been playing more sealed Magic the Gathering. This time I didn't quite make top 8. I didn't really bubble either. I went 3-1 and 3-2 and 1, 3-2 and 1. Even at 4-2 I probably would have bubbled out. So it was okay. It was fun. It was nice to get out and see some of the old Magic friends and play an event with them. But yeah, how's your week been, Trey?
Yeah, it was fun. I also played the same two events. I played the Armory as well. I also played the Magic the Gathering RCQ. I did worse in the RCQ than Yuki. I went home after like round 4. And the Armory, I lost to Yuki when she was playing Azalea. You want to talk a little bit about that one? How was the what kind of Azalea deck did you play?
Yeah, I played something. It was like a Death Dealer Azalea list, fairly similar to the one Levi or I'm a Papaya was playing. I think he came in top 32 at calling Indianapolis on his list. And I basically took that. I wanted to try out some Heat Seekers in it just because it's just a rawly powerful card. And even if you don't get a face down arsenal to use your Skullbone Cross Drop, it seems like it might be worth it overall. I don't know. Haven't quite made up my mind there, but
Not enough reps yet.
yeah, not enough reps yet. But overall, the deck's really fun. I think it's pretty close. It's just a good value deck. Death Dealer drawing you a card basically every turn is really, really solid. And yeah, you just have a good mix of on hits. You can play Azalea compared to Lexi can incorporate defense reactions much easier, and so she can kind of play a little bit more mid-rangey, which is quite strong right now.
That's fair. That's fair. Are you excited for the new Ranger cards coming out?
I am. I think that we've seen some interesting ones already. The Quiver looks quite powerful to me, and the Riptide specialization that we saw, pretty spicy, and they kind of made the announcement that they're going to make traps so that they don't have to be played from Arsenal.
Yeah, I think I'll just go very quickly into that then. So the new card that got spoiled is called Collapsing Trap. The legendary Riptide specialization. It's a Ranger defense reaction subtype trap. Costs 0 to play. It's a blue pitch. And it says, when this defends an attack with Go Again, the attacking hero discards their hand and draws that many cards -1.
So it's a blue 3-block defense reaction with significant upside against basically most aggro decks, since most aggro decks are usually wanting to go wide. And previously, traps always needed to be played. The trap keyword meant that it could only be played from Arsenal, but LSS essentially released an article saying that they felt like this was just a little bit too clunky to make a trap-focused character, because you either don't have enough traps or you have too many traps and you can't play them all, which is something I was kind of worried about. So I think this is a good change. I think that it is, yeah, I was pretty skeptical of traps. Like, I thought it was cool that they're exploring it, but I was pretty skeptical. But knowing that they're making all the new traps work this way, I think it's some pretty cool design space for Riptide potentially.
There's one other spoiler that came out. It's called Bard Castaway. This one is a Ranger weapon bow that's two-handed. Looks like it's going to be the common weapon for this set. And it says, once per turn instant, you may put a arrow card from your hand face up in your arsenal. And then it has a second ability. It says, once per turn instant, pay a resource. You may turn a face-down arrow card. You may turn a face-down arrow in your arsenal face up. If you do, put an aim counter on it. This card looks pretty bad, right?
It strikes me as primarily a limited card. The one place I could maybe... It could end up being good in Riptide if Riptide is incentivized to play traps from Arsenal somehow, like if they still keep some of that design space, like maybe he has like a bonus for playing traps from Arsenal. And some of those traps cost resources. I could see the instant speed being relevant. Like you play the trap from Arsenal, it's like a 2 cost trap, and then you have a floating resource and you can load an arrow. So I could see that being relevant, but otherwise, yeah, it's hard for this to really compete with Sandscour, Great Bow, or Death Dealer. So unless that instant speed text really matters, it seems mostly like a limited weapon to me.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Wait, can we not play Voltaire? Is that an elemental?
It's an elemental weapon, so yeah,
Okay,
if you
so
want to
it's
play Voltaire, you have to play Lexi.
okay, okay. Then let's move on into our main topic, which is the 2023 Premiere Play announcement, or what is it called? What do they name this article actually?
They just call it the Premiere Play announcement.
Oh yeah, that's exactly what they call it, the Premiere Play announcement. How do you wanna start talking about this?
In this announcement, they did a combination of telling us about events. Like there are certain events that got announced, like Calling Antwerp, that now have a page that you can go and look at and a date and everything. They also kind of gave us, I guess, a bit of a roadmap for each region of what players can expect, at least in terms of calling Pro Tour, Worlds, etc. So we kind of have an idea of like the number of events and maybe like which quarter they're in. And in some cases, we have an idea of when those events are exactly. And in other cases, they're kind of like to be announced. Um, but I think having a roadmap is like a pretty solid change. I know a lot of people were not too happy with that. And now we do have a pretty decent overview. Doesn't have all the dates locked in, but as long as that is coming in a reasonable time frame, I think it's overall is showing improvement in their kind of ability to schedule ahead and give more lead time, which is nice.
Yeah, we basically have until July. There's even an event on at. There's already an event for August scheduled now, which is nice. But it looks pretty sparse to me right now. Do you think they're gonna add more events that's like gonna be hosted in May or April as well?
Yeah, I think that this announcement is mostly focused on battle hardens, callings, and I guess like Pro Tour slash Worlds. Everything else seems kind of left out. So I think that they're going to have, like, I imagine there's an RTN season. We know that skirmish season is coming up when Outsiders releases, so March, and then I believe that there's going to be an RTN season sometime in quarter 2. We don't know the details, but I think that's what their original OP announcement said. So there will be some seasons and stuff like that, but I agree that in terms of major events, it is fairly sparse, which maybe what we should do is just break down by region kind of what the major events that got announced are and kind of like what you can expect overall from each region kind of for the year, because now we have that information.
Sure, let's go into that. So the first thing we'll talk about will be Europe, which got the most number of events, the most number of callings for sure. So in Europe, we got calling Antwerp, calling. Why did I even try and start? Yuki, I'm gonna let you just name the locations.
Okay. I'll do my best. We have calling Antwerp in Belgium. We have calling Birmingham in the UK. And we also know about battle hardened. I'm going to try here. Metropole Ruhr. It's in Germany, I believe. And then later we know that Worlds is going to be in Europe, but we don't know which country. And then of course, so like each country will have their own nationals. So that kind of leaves like 4 major events: the 2 callings, Worlds, which will have a calling attached to it, but we'll just call that one event, since you can't really play both. It's one weekend, anyways, and then the national. So that's kind of 4 major events for the year for Europe, and that kind of seems to be the norm. So in North America, we've already had the calling Indianapolis. There's also Pro Tour Baltimore slash Calling Baltimore coming up in April, late
Yeah,
April.
and the end of April.
Yeah. We had 3 Battle Hardens announced in the US in Richmond, Pittsburgh, and Salt Lake City. And they sort of mentioned that there's going to be another calling attached to US Nationals whenever that happens, and then one more calling in quarter 4 as kind of a standalone event, which again kind of puts us at that 4 major events mark. The calling in Q4 and Indianapolis, and then the calling attached to US Nationals and the Pro Tour slash calling weekend. So kind of 4 major weekends in North America as well.
Then we also have a couple of smaller regions as well. So the APAC region is getting Calling Auckland, and is that the only one that's actually been announced?
Yeah, so we know that Calling Auckland is coming this week actually. So that one's already been announced for a while, and then the rest of the details they kind of mentioned, like notably the APAC region has been not included in actual event announcements, and they kind of just give us an outline and say that we're going to get the full details by March 31st. So that outline says 2 callings in East or Southeast Asia, 1 calling in Australia, and then some battle hardens. So that's sort of 3 callings total, plus Auckland gives them a total of 4 callings, and then their individual nationals. So you could kind of say that there's like 5 major events in APAC. APAC is also sort of the most spread out. Um, like the distance from Oceania, like Auckland, I guess New Zealand, Australia region to say Singapore is pretty far. Like there's a major flight. So even though it's like 5 events, it is quite spread out geographically.
Yeah, it's gonna be quite difficult to actually go to all five major events, even if you are living in that area.
Yeah, exactly.
And you have Brazil just singled out. Is this? I didn't actually read the whole article.
Yeah, they sort of mentioned that. So Fab has been introduced in Brazil recently. They mentioned that they see that there's over 100 stores carrying it now, and players are picking it up, and it's becoming more popular, which is cool. Brazil is a region that is usually present in other TCGs, so seeing it represented in Flesh and Blood is a good addition. And they sort of mentioned that they're going to look at doing some battle hardens and the first ever national championship in Brazil this year. But I don't think it doesn't sound like there's going to be any calling or anything above a battle hardened or nationals for
Yeah, okay,
Brazil, at least this year.
that's fair. That's fair. No, it's a good thing that they're getting the nationals though. It's like I think there was a lot of different nationals last year, and Brazil getting one a nationals there is a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's cool to see them included, and we know Fab's expanding to Japan recently, and so Flesh and Blood continuing to get picked up around the world, which is always I think really positive for the game.
I wonder if they're gonna have nationals this year in Japan. I think there was an article outlining what kind of events they're gonna have, but I've forgotten at this point. It's been 2 months since I read that article.
Yeah, I think you're right that they do mention it, and I also can't remember.
Okay, and what do you think about this announcement? Like, what is your first impression or initial impression on it? I guess it's not an initial impression anymore. We had like 5 days to think about it.
Yeah, so when I first read this, I was honestly pretty disappointed. I already felt like the time up until Pro Tour Baltimore felt pretty empty. Like we haven't really had anything since ProQuest season to participate in. And like, yeah, there's a skirmish season and a new set, and that'll be fun. I will be traveling to Chicago after all. I convinced Nia. We talked about it in the sign off. So I will be traveling for release weekend event at MinMax Games. It's a 5K, so that will be fun. And I hope that, maybe more stores can run cool events like this to fill in some of the gaps. But honestly, like from my perspective, it's kind of Pro Tour and national season, and then maybe traveling to Worlds. That's sort of it. Like it's like a good 3 months between each major event with like maybe like one small season kind of packed in there. And honestly, I was a little bit disappointed. I was hoping that they would be adding more events because right now the OP calendar just feels kind of empty, especially compared to last year where it just seemed like there was something like almost every week, even if it was like a skirmish or whatever.
Yeah, I feel the same way. It's just like, at least for me, like I didn't queue for PT3, so I don't even have Baltimore on my list of that on that. I just don't have events that's like in traveling distance until past August, I guess, if they aren't gonna add any more. If they're not adding any more events than what we got announced here until August, I don't have events until after August.
Yeah, I think we'll have a road to national season somewhere in there. And then nationals will probably be like August or September by the sounds of it, although we don't know exactly when. But but yeah, I think for a lot of people, if you didn't qualify or you miss one of these events, you might be waiting 6 months between major events, which is just honestly a little too long for my liking.
Yeah, it's gonna be a full set where I don't get to play. Like, I guess I could try and make like a battle hardened, but it's battle hardened is a little bit too small to even just travel for in the first place.
Yeah, I kind of agree. There's sort of like this really awkward middle ground where if you place first or second, your trip is worth it. And otherwise, if you're flying to a battle hardened, doesn't it doesn't feel good.
Doesn't make sense, honestly. It's like very it's like the what's it called? The PTI? The PTI is only for first and second, so even if you think you're like the best player going to that event, like you could lose in top 8. Like if you lose in top 8, you still don't get anything. Like and the pricing is like not the best. It's like a good local event kind of thing where if they like I guess if we compare it to Magic, if some of the stores used to run like a 3K or a 5K, I guess that's what MinMax game is doing. It's
Yep.
like the price pool is very similar to that, so it's pretty underwhelming to like actually fly out for it.
I'd say it's even less than MinMax probably because MinMax actually is a 5K plus a PTI plus a gold foil. Um,
Wait, what?
yeah,
Wait, Mac they got a PTI for
yeah,
first?
they have a PTI and a gold foil for first.
Oh
It's
wow.
actually
So
a pretty decent event, but like if compared to a battle hardened, it's like mostly the gold foil and the PTI, and there's like I don't know what the prize pool is. It's very small.
I think prize pools for
It's like 1 to 2,000 total, I think.
no, it's a little bit more than that. It's 1,000 plus 515. Oh no, it's $2,000 total. You're right.
$2,000 total. Okay.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Battle Hardens feel like an. What do you think about Battle Hardens, Jay? I feel like they're like in this awkward spot, and I almost wonder if they are better off like rather than being these like SCG con events where they rent out a space. I've been wondering if Battle Hardened should almost just be like the stores that are really involved, like Minmax Games and Realm Gaming, and putting together awesome events and getting good turnouts. Could have like a like a special like 3K style battle hardened rather than like making it this because it feels like they're trying to make it this like event that you can travel to and they just unless you can drive there in a couple hours it's just not really worth it.
I do like that LSS is supporting like the right kind of tournament where I do like battle hardens in general, but there just isn't enough of it around the world in a frequency that I would like. So like I would like it to either have there to be more battle hardens or like even like maybe like a battle harden every week somewhere in the world. Somewhere if I can travel to a battle harden once a month, like if there was like one in Vegas. It's the thing is like our side of the country I can't even think of enough like venues that we could have once a month kind of thing, you know what I mean?
Yeah, like we had a battle hardened in Portland once and that was about it.
Well, I guess man, what was that store in this in Seattle that always hosts a bigger like ProQuest?
Mr. Bells.
Mr. Bills, yeah, we could have like if Mr. Bills hosted like a battle harden, that would probably make a little bit of sense.
Yeah, I think that would almost be cooler. And I wonder, I guess I don't know like what the costs to them are for like running that versus having it like at an SCG con or, at this event hall. I don't know like what the trade offs are there, but I wonder if it's something to look at because the battle hardens feel like there's like these resources being put in and it's great for the people that live there, but it's sort of, it's like a little bit awkward.
I guess it does make sense that they are mostly on the East Coast because it's just more physical people there. You know, like there's
That's true.
more living humans on that side of on that side of the United States.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough.
So the attendance is naturally larger, and we're not gonna get that large of an attendance in let's say Portland.
Yeah, that's true. I think last Battle Hard in Portland was like 80 players, 70 players, something like that.
Hmm.
It was decent, but it wasn't amazing.
Yeah, it's what was that problem called? Like the chicken or egg problem, where what comes first? You need like players to you'll need the players to actually support these events, but you won't get new players unless there are events.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just feel like Fab is kind of in a little bit of that space right now, especially as they're trying to support more and more regions and yeah, just have them all feel entertained. So back in their original OP 2023 announcement, LSS actually mentioned that they were kind of responding to some of the feedback on burnout and exhaustion and event overload, and that they were looking to kind of dial that back a little bit. And I think at this point, we can kind of see how they've gone about doing that in 2023. And I think I know for myself, and the sense I'm getting from you too, is that they maybe they maybe took this like a little bit
Too
too
far.
far
Yeah.
or didn't quite implement it in the right way, and it feels like there's just not as many events as we would like. And in particular, like Jay mentioned, if you miss like one major event, like maybe the weekend doesn't line up for you, it just ends up being so long between events. And I think that's like a big problem with this like one event per quarter, which is one major event per quarter, which is kind of like roughly where we're at right now.
Honestly, I'm actually okay with the spacing of the Pro Tour, Nationals, Worlds this year. I think the spacing is actually pretty good. The problem I'm having is like there isn't the tier below it, which is like the
Hmm.
callings and the battle hardens that are accessible, at least to me. It might be a little bit different for some people, but I guess like compared to last year, Europe is getting a significant amount more events, which is I think if I was living in Europe, I'd be pretty happy with this announcement.
Yeah.
But for us, like honestly, I just need like a calling Vegas to happen just before the summer or something like that.
Yeah. And I think we're just seeing this as sort of like a general problem that there just aren't really quite enough of the maybe like one step down from pro tour events in general. Because I know in Europe, people were quite like a lot of the sentiment was there's been nothing since the calling Lille last summer in terms of major events. And so there was like some, I don't want to say resentment, but there were some people like unhappy and like looking forward to having new events. And while this does make them happy, it's sort of like, well, now some other regions also have big gaps. So it's sort of, it doesn't feel like it's necessarily fixing the problem. It just feels like there's sort of this ongoing problem where regions are not quite as supported as they could be.
Yeah, I think they just need to host more events more frequently, at least at the calling level, where these callings you don't need to go to them, right? Like it's not everyone's gonna go to all the callings, and like all the competitive players aren't gonna travel to every single calling. That's just not gonna happen. So you can just like even if they're like a little bit more packed together, you're not gonna have that burnout problem where people will decide to go to one calling and not the other ones. The problem that happened last year was that we had the Pro Tour where if you qualify, you had to go basically. We had Nationals where if you qualified, you basically had to go. And you had Worlds where even if you're not qualified, people were buying PTIs to get into it. Like it was that big of an event. So
Yeah.
we had three events where you really couldn't miss. Like you just had to go.
Yeah. And it was in the span of like 2 months, which I think was just a little bit too more than like I actually thought the number of events and like the way that the OP system worked last year was pretty good. It was just that those three majors were too close together. It was
Yeah.
we just needed like a little bit of time to breathe, and then I think there would have been less of the like everybody's sick of uprising draft because all the major events have been uprising draft. Like I think if you spread it out more, you have less of that kind
Yeah.
of.
People's gonna complain about limited no matter how many events or what limited format it is. It's not gonna. At every point, there's gonna be people who's gonna complain about constructed, and there's always gonna be people that's gonna complain about limited. It doesn't matter how long the format's been out for, how new the format is. That really doesn't matter. People's gonna complain no matter what.
I agree that there's always going to be people unhappy with the set, but I also think that maybe Lille, Nats, and Worlds all being Outsiders Limited was a
Uprising.
little bit stale. Sorry, yeah, Uprising.
Yeah. Uprising. Honestly, I loved it. I loved Uprising Limited. It was fun to play. The draft portion was quite challenging. Like, yes, you did get train wreck sometimes, and when you did, you just really couldn't come back, and it really sucked at like the higher level events when you either made a one miss pick, or the guy on your left decided to hard punish you after you committing to one hero or whatever. But honestly, it was a really fun and interesting draft portion. It was a really good games. It's just like, I don't know. I liked Uprising.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I like it as well. I just feel like, maybe like two majors is like about the right amount for a set.
Honestly, if there was no constructed portion, I would like it better.
Fair enough. We do love limited at on the Bauble here.
Why do I want to like build a 60 card deck? And is it 60? Yeah, it's 60. Or I guess it's 80. Why would I want to build an 80 card deck and then bring it to a tournament where I can just learn one set and prepare for that? It's so much easier to do.
Fair enough. Um, so maybe getting back onto our main topic here, I think we both agree that there's not quite enough events for our tastes. Um, and right now, it seems like most regions have about four-ish events, or about one event every 3 months, roughly speaking. What do you think is the ideal number of, let's just say, like premier level events, which we're going to define as, let's leave battle hardens out of it because I think they're like very localized, and let's stick to callings, nationals, pro tours, or worlds, and let's not count like pro tour Baltimore and calling Baltimore as one event as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So what do you think is like the right number of like premier play weekends per, like, let's say continent or region?
I would have to say about six. Six. Well, I guess Worlds will be a little bit different. In the month that there's Worlds, I don't think we need to have a calling like at all. I think that can just be like the event everyone should be like focusing on. But
That's fair.
I feel like there should be a calling or nationals or pro tour once every 1.5 month per region. I think 1.5 month, maybe 2 months if you know, depending on like what competitive season is going on at that time. Where if it's like a skirmish season, there definitely could be a calling. But if it's like a road to national seasons, we probably don't need a calling at that timing. But somewhere about once every 2 months, so six per year would be nice.
I think I agree with that. I think about once every 2 months seems like the right spot. And then, again, if you miss an event, then you're looking at about 4 months between events, which is just like a lot. You feel a little more engaged than when it's like the full 6 months and you might just miss an entire set.
Yeah, being able to play an event during that set feels really good. Like when a new set comes out, you're excited for the set. You have some improvements you can make to your deck or build a brand new deck. And if you don't have like a place to like really try that deck out, it feels pretty bad. Like outside of your local armory or like a skirmish, whatever.
I think another thing that's potentially missing here is, like, I don't want to say the skirmishes aren't successful. I think that they're like a really cool event and I like that they have them and I definitely want them to continue. But sometimes I think the skirmishes can kind of like fall flat where you just like have this self-contained skirmish and people like show up, but they're not like super excited or invested in it. Like they're not like testing further skirmishes. And I think that if you started having these events every 1.5, 2 months, and you had like, for example, you had skirmish season, and we know that there's going to be like a sealed skirmish for outsiders, and you also had a sealed calling coming up. I think that that would just like play really nicely together, where that skirmish season, like people would be like, oh, I want to do this because I'm practicing for the upcoming calling. But right now it's like I could play sealed outsiders at my skirmish and I'll do that because I love limited, but it doesn't really like tie in with anything else in the season. And I think that that would go a long way, is like having that you know what I mean, that overlap between sort of like the
Events, yeah.
in-store events and the big events that we're going to.
That's just hard to do though. Like even other games can't do that because like if you were trying to do or organize some format to bigger event thing, then it somewhat isolates like some of the other players that like other formats. So it's actually I think I don't agree with that. I'd rather have more different formats per for like the smaller events and
Okay.
then have like a different event at the bigger event just because like every card game like there's gonna be a format people like where like I like draft more than other people. Other people like classic constructed more than other people. Other people like blitz more than other people. Like everyone has their own format they like. And when a major event and the local event is both in, let's say, sealed, the people who like constructed doesn't care about that whole season. Like there's just like nothing for them to do. And vice versa when it's all just classic constructed into a classic constructed like calling or something, you're just like I'll go to the calling and play drafts. Like it's like I'm not gonna care too much about the actual main event.
That's fair. Yeah. I guess it depends on like how you're engaging with the game, and if you're really wanting to play one format, I could see that definitely being
Yeah,
a
I
bit of a negative. Yeah.
for people like you where you're gonna play literally every format, like it's that's not gonna matter to you if it's a blitz calling, if it's a constructed calling, limited calling, you're gonna play any of them, right? Like
Probably. I mean, I would say that like I definitely have my favorites. Like I'd really like to see a limited calling, and Blitz is definitely not my preference. But I also feel like if there was a season and then a major event, I might be a little more invested in that format, at least for a little while. And so long as it's changing, like I wouldn't want it to be like that and just like all classic constructed all the time. I'd want a variety of formats, just like you said.
for example, let's say on March, they just randomly, right now, exact same schedule, but they added calling Seattle blitz format. Would you be pretty unhappy?
I think it'd actually be pretty cool. I'd rather it would be limited, but
No, I'm just saying, just right now, all the other events doesn't change. We get calling Seattle in March. You'll be happy, right? Like it doesn't
yeah,
matter what format it is. Like you're
that's
gonna
true.
go
That's
play
true.
it. There's gonna be some like, and I know there's gonna be some people in our community that's just not gonna go to that calling because it's blitz.
That's fair. Yeah. Okay. I'm convinced. Having some variety is good. That's fair.
Yeah, but like obviously, exactly what you said is right too. Where once there is like an event to like work for, if the local stores like at the local store level, not like even Battle Hardened or like the skirmish season, if they just like hosted a sealed event for an upcoming sealed calling, that event's gonna get more traction than otherwise.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Exactly.
I think they don't stores can just run their events if they want to. Like they can just host their own events, like min max games. Like I
Yeah.
feel like more stores should try and host events where it's worth traveling to, and maybe that might help with like at least like the West Coast, US. You know, West Coast US, West Coast Canada. If some store decides to be like, oh, there's a 5K or a 10K somewhere in this area, um, that would be cool. Honestly, I would really wish that happens. I can't see it happening, but you know, it's a hope.
It's cool for sure. I think that, maybe the piece that's missing from our conversation so far is that running events is expensive and not necessarily profitable. And often, I feel like often a lot of it is sort of like marketing for your store and you make up for it by selling singles and stuff like that. But
Hmm.
a lot of stores I feel are like a lot of the singles market is like moving towards TCG player and Discord transactions. And I feel like a lot of stores just aren't, maybe it's just maybe it's just like a Canadian thing, but stores are not carrying singles or stocking singles nearly as much in the last like, I don't know, half a year.
Yeah, I think to that point, it's very difficult to get a decent size flesh and blood stock because of the rarity system, and it's not worth it for stores to carry $2 mythics all the time. And you know buy up people's collections for that. It's a lot of work to sort, keep inventory up, and all of that, just to sell a couple dollar cards. And yes, there are expensive cards in this game, but those are even harder to come by. And the only people that would have stock is the people who would open up product. And but once the initial stock is gone, they just really have very little incentive to keep opening product to keep their inventory up.
Yeah. And unfortunately just, venues and everything is just so expensive that it's really hard to run everything. And I will say that as much as we're maybe disappointed about the events, I'm at least grateful that we do have some organized play. And I'm sure that there's a lot that goes into the scheduling for LSS. Like they need somebody to help host and run those events in each region. And, like SCG has been doing a lot of that. So that's going to service a certain part of North America. And then there's costs associated with that. And you can't it's not as simple as just saying, like, well, battle hardens are $2,000. You cut 5 of them and then that's a calling because it's $10,000 for like a smaller calling. Like it doesn't necessarily work that way. There's like a lot of costs associated with the event, and obviously there's a lot behind the scenes that we're not privy to, and it needs to make good business sense for them in the stores as well. So there's also that piece that I think sometimes goes unnoticed by players or unappreciated.
Nah, the thing we have to do now is just host our own event. You know, we're gonna rent out Vancouver Convention Center and host a limited calling here.
Okay, let me know how that goes for you, Jay.
Honestly, if there's people like that would just go like, I'm just gonna do it myself, we'll have enough events. we just need somebody to do that.
It's true. And I will say that LSS seems to have been, from my perspective, pretty good about supporting people like that. Like it's cool that MinMax Games is getting the PTI and the gold foil, and I think it's like relatively inexpensive for LSS to do that for the people who, or the stores who are really putting in that work, and it's cool that they're doing that stuff. I think it makes a big difference.
Yeah, I think it really does. You gonna move on to the next little thing we have?
Yeah, so with this kind of lull in events, I know it's been leaving me wondering about what to do with my time and some of the other people I talk to as well. So I thought we could have a little question about, like, what have we been doing to fill downtime between big events, and what can people do to fill in the downtime if they have some. I know some people have events that they're practicing for right now and they're in the weeds, but it seems like with this kind of schedule, even if you're busy right now, you're probably going to have some downtime coming up at some point.
I guess we should start with yourself. I think. What do you do? Like, what did you do in the last couple of weeks? Like, I already know the answer to it, but
Yeah, mostly just take a break. I've been going skiing. I've been playing Magic the Gathering Limited, playing other games. I think that sometimes just having a break is not a terrible thing. Playing other games or just doing other things that you enjoy can be a good way to fill in the time. Although I'm getting pretty hungry for Flesh and Blood events, so excited for the new set.
are you gonna go to all the what's it called, the pre-releases associated in our area?
Probably. It's like just a good excuse to go and play sealed.
Yeah, I think we have 3 local pre-releases that we can go to.
Yeah, that's not bad. Are you gonna go?
I'm still undecided, probably, but we'll see.
Um, but yeah, for me, it's mostly been that. Is there anything that you've been doing to fill in the time?
For myself, it's nothing really changed for me. Flesh and Blood is just part of one of the games that I play. If for the listeners that doesn't really know me too well, I play basically every TCG that you can imagine. There is a couple of games I haven't touched before, and some of the newer ones I actually haven't touched. The most popular one being One Piece. I just haven't had a chance to play it or a reason to pick it up. And but almost everything else I have touched and played at either like a regional level or national level. And for me, in March, at least in Vancouver, we have the regional championships for Magic or the Pokemon regionals that's coming up. I'm pretty sad. I actually missed the registration period, or the Pokemon regionals sold out, the TCG. And I'm waiting for like the cancellations to try and like sign up at exactly 6 p.m. on Thursday to try and get a spot in the TCG section.
Fair enough.
And in end of March, I might go down to Vegas to go play a new card game called Battle Spirit Saga, which has like the most ridiculous prize pool I've ever heard of for a TCG that isn't even out yet. It happens to be a reboot. Battle Spirits was a game before, and it looks like it's just rebooting the game.
Yeah.
And then in April, I'm not decided yet, but there's a couple of poker tournaments that's gonna happen. I think most people know what the World Series of Poker is. That ends up starting up in May-ish to mid-August, mid-July, I think. So my those months are gonna be mainly doing that. So like I have other things I will be doing. It's just that Flesh and Blood, I have no reason to be playing Flesh and Blood until probably after August.
So, do you want to talk about what people could be doing? Like maybe people are keen to play Flesh and Blood, or they don't, they're not really interested in picking up another card game. What are some good things that people can be doing in their downtime, like when there's, no new set out, no major event to prepare for? What could you be doing if you're looking to improve?
Well, the easiest thing to do is to learn a new deck, right? What's the best way of saying this? The best way to learn how to play against the deck is to play the deck. So even if it's a deck, like if you're having troubles beating a deck, you should try playing it into the matchup that you want to play. And honestly, if you are just practicing, just, play it on Talishar, print out the deck and play it against a friend. Like it's the best way to improve.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's honestly better than playing your own deck.
Yeah, I think playing your deck has a lot of you get a lot of benefit out of it early on when you start picking up a new deck and you're practicing it, but the more that you play that deck, the fewer like lessons and returns that you get from that time playing it relative to the time that you're spending. So I think at a certain point, like Jay said, you're much better off playing other decks and like learning the matchup from another perspective, and in particular paying attention to things like, huh, when the opponent does this against me, I absolutely hate it and it's really, really bad for me. Maybe I should try and enact that gameplay pattern, or that, whatever it is that they're doing that's making the game difficult for you. You should try enacting that in your own gameplay from the other side.
And one thing that you'll notice when you start playing other decks, which is true in almost every single TCG, is you will stop, or it'll be difficult for you to lose to the deck you used to main.
Mm-hmm.
Like a really cool feeling in like every TCG is like if you're playing, let's say, if you spent your whole time playing Briar and you pick up, let's say, I don't know, Bravo, you can see, like, you can physically tell that when you play against Briar or when you play against other decks, you have an easier time playing against the deck you used to main because you know exactly what they're trying to do against you, and you know exactly what you hated getting done to, so then you get to do that against the deck that you want to beat, essentially, or the deck that you used to main.
Yeah, you kind of know like all the little tricks in the matchup already just because you've experienced all like the worst things that can happen when you're playing that deck.
Yeah, and like whenever they misplay, you can tell very quickly that, oh, they missed the damage, they missed 2 damage here. Just if you're proficient at the deck you used to main, I think that's like it's a good level up. It's a good time to level up your game, is just doing that, honestly.
Another thing that you can do in a lot of sets, but I think Outsiders especially, because we already know all the heroes in Outsiders and their classes, and a lot of the heroes are returning, like Arachne, Katsu, and Azalea are actually already in the game. And if you're interested in building, I think, any of those heroes, just picking it up and learning it, or like in my case, I've been playing Azalea again, and Azalea was the first class I've ever played, the first deck I ever played a lot. It was the first deck I bought. So I've played a ton of Azalea, but I played it in the Crucible of War metagame. So just kind of like familiarizing myself with the new cards and how they fit into the strategy and how the deck has evolved since I last played it kind of sets me up to be in a good spot to then work on that deck and start incorporating all the new cards. So I think that, if you're excited about, even if you're excited about, I don't know, Riptide, you could pick up a Ranger and start trying it, and it will have some benefit, or you could pick up Arachne if you wanted to play Uzuri, and I think it would give you a good starting place when we get to spoilers.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited for the spoilers, honestly. I just want Uzuri to have an ability. Yeah, my statement ends there. I want Uzuri to have an ability.
Are you trying to say Arachne doesn't have an ability?
Even if you just don't use her ability, like, at all, like, even if you play contract cards, if you just, like, immediately put the card to the bottom without looking at it, the game would not change. Like, you don't, there's almost no benefit to it.
It is pretty marginal.
Anything else that people can do while during these down seasons?
Another thing that is maybe not the easiest to do, but if you have a group of friends that's interested, is you could play an old limited set that you haven't played much before. Um, there's a kind of a lot of limited sets that most people haven't really gotten to experience because they happened during the pandemic or before they started playing. And honestly, I think all the limited sets are kind of fun in their own right, and you could like organize a draft with some friends. You could even play sealed deck with some friends if you wanted to. So I think sometimes revisiting those old sets can be really really fun, and it can be hard to get these organized, but I think in my experience, usually if you say I want to make this happen and you give people like a 2 or 3 weeks notice and you say we're doing it on this day, who can sign up, and if you have like a local community Discord or you invite people at your armory, you can probably get people to come.
Yeah, happens a lot in Vancouver. I know there's like the guys typically do like a draft every weekend. I think Infinity doesn't do it or something like that, or once a month or something like that. Honestly, or I guess for Baltimore, we're gonna try and organize some kind of draft day too, right?
Yeah, we're probably going to do a big draft day where we do like, I don't know, 3 or 4 drafts or something. I haven't figured that out yet, but
Yeah, get Nia to fly out for one of them.
Well, he was gonna fly out, and then I convinced him to go to Chicago. So I wonder if I can convince him to also fly out.
Yeah, like I think like one of the bigger reasons why he couldn't come out was because I was planning to go to Vegas for Battle Spirits that weekend, same weekend as Outsiders come out.
Yeah, yeah. So maybe we can make that happen. If listeners are wanting to play an older limited set, which ones are your favorites? Like which ones would you recommend personally?
I think my favorite is Arc Draft. Arc just has like the most unique heroes, I think, where they all do very different things and they're all cool. Like Kano, like the way you want to draft Kano is very different from the way you want to draft Dash, and Dash is very different from the way you want to draft Azalea, and Azalea is very different from what you want to do with like Viscerai. So, but like Azalea and Kano is like somewhat similar on the cards you want. Dash and Viscerai sometimes want the same kind of cards. Like they all also just share some kind of common trait. So it's actually pretty cool where like trying to figure out what cards are getting picked and what deck is open is pretty interesting. And the generics are just good enough that like you can pick up to stay open long enough to really pivot and decide what hero you want to go into.
Yeah, the way it ends up working is a lot of the generics will be like pretty good in maybe like two of the decks. Like Come to Fight is it's like the 1 cost +3 go again non-attack action that fits in really nicely with Viscerai because he wants non-attacks and attacks, but it also works well in Azalea because you can pump up your arrow, and like most of the cards in that set kind of fit really cleanly into like two of the decks, and so you end up having all this overlap, kind of like Tails with the elements in a sense, I guess.
Honestly, Come to Fight's good in all four decks because it blocks for three.
That's fair. If it's like a blue one or something, it's pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah. What's your favorite set?
I think if I was going to recommend a set to people, maybe recommend Monarch. I think that Monarch is a pretty fun limited format that I feel like a lot of people haven't played. And one of the things I like about Monarch is it kind of teaches you to figure out how you're going to win the game. I feel like that's really emphasized in Monarch more than a lot of other sets. Like Prism doesn't need to worry about this so much because she can just sort of like play Herald and hit people with her Iris, and that's kind of good enough. But Levia, like you need a way to, get some extra actions or do like a big dominate, or like you're kind of like setting up a very specific end game that you execute again and again. Chain, you're like trying to pitch stack this end game so that you don't get fatigued. And then Bolton, honestly, I'm pretty bad at drafting Bolton, but I know that you can do like via the Vanguard, Gallantry Gold shenanigans and have some pretty strong turns. So I think that, yeah, it teaches you something about Flesh and Blood that's pretty fundamental and pretty valuable.
I think my favorite Monarch draft is the Monarch draft where Yuki is, I think at end of pack 2, Yuki's just like, I have a busted Bolton deck. I'm gonna go 3-0 with it. I'm gonna show you how Bolton is playable. And then I think the whole table was a little bit skeptical because um at that time Bolton was like, I don't think anyone in our local community got to 3-0 with Bolton. And I think you lost round 1. And then you're just like, oh, never mind. This deck's like, okay. And then you lost round 2. And then you're like, okay, Bolton bad.
To be fair, I don't think Bolton is truly bad. Like
Yeah, I don't think so
I've gotten
either.
destroyed. I've gotten destroyed by like honestly both Erics playing Bolton. So the deck can be good. I'm just not good at drafting it.
Yeah. The best part, I think, was like, oh, wow, your deck is good. How many V of the Vanguards do you have? And you had 0?
Yeah.
And then I think both Erics were just like, what? It's just like the genuine question mark in their face.
I mean, I know that that card's good in Bolton. I just feel like I felt like I had like all these take flights. I had the Bolt of Courage. Is that what the card's called?
Yeah, I think so.
I had a bunch of Bolt of Courages and like ways to pump it so that, and like the Courage of Blade Holds, so that I could like give it +3 and give it go again and draw a card. But
Look, you
the
just said
deck
it
just wasn't good
yourself.
enough.
You just said it yourself. You need a way to win. That's not a way to win. Those are just good cards. The V of the Vanguard, that's the way to win.
Anyways, I think that old limited sets are a great way to go if you have some downtime and you're looking for something fun to do. And I think that one of the really cool things about limited is that the skills that you learn in limited transfer really, really well just to any format that you play, because it's often just kind of like the most fundamental gameplay, like card evaluation and having a good resource curve and having a game plan in your deck and managing the threats in your deck and pitch stacking. Like you just kind of like learn all the fundamentals of Flesh and Blood by playing limited. And usually each limited set has like a little bit of a different thing to teach you.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. Yeah, and if you are honestly, if you're just like beginning to play draft, or like it's gonna be your first draft ever, maybe WTR might be the best one to like start off with. Honestly.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I do think that Arcane Rising and Monarch, while they're both, I think we like them because they're like kind of intricate and there's like quite a bit of interesting decisions in them, but they are more complicated. And if you're pretty new to draft, you might find a set like WTR a little bit more easy to pick up and easy to learn.
Yeah, Uprising and WTR is my recommendations for your first draft. Uprising, don't even think about it. Pick a hero you want to play, force it. You will have a functional deck, somewhat, no matter what. And
Yeah.
WTR is very similar, except just my recommendation on that one is pick up generics. Generics are very good in it, and the cards you've seen before are probably very powerful.
Yeah, if you know that people play that card in Classic Constructed, probably a good card.
Pummel's broken. Razor Reflex is broken.
It's wild. There's so many good cards in WTR. When you go through, you're just like, all of these cards see play. Like almost all of them are relevant cards.
A lot of the commons still see play. Wounded Bull is a good card.
Yeah, the generics and the class cards, they're just all really good.
Hmm. It's actually cool to see that like a card, or sorry, a cards that came out maybe 2 3 years ago. It's 3 years ago now. Is still seeing, constructive play. It's just like a good feeling. Honestly, it's a good feeling.
Anything else here to wrap up our Premier Play off-season discussion?
No, I think that's everything. We talked almost an hour.
So that's going to wrap us up for this week. Let us know what you think down in the comments below. If there are things that you like doing in your off season, if you have a favorite limited set that you think other people would enjoy, or if there's another game that you are excited about to fill in the time, we'd love to hear about any of that and more in the comments down below. If you want to get in touch with us, you can also do so on Twitter. I'm at YukiLeeBender on Twitter, and Jay is at UedaJ. Or you can email us at onthebauble@gmail.com and send your questions directly there. If you have any questions or feedback, we really appreciate it. Any way you want to engage with the show really helps us know how to make content that's interesting for you. So on that note, we're going to end off here. Good luck playing at your local armories, and I hope that outsiders bring some new sweet cards for all of us to enjoy in a new fun limited format that we can all play together and learn together. Do we have a sign off?
Spoiler card?
I don't know how much we can talk about the spoiler card.
That we have one?
It's true. Okay.
We've never. I don't think anyone knows outside of like
That's true.
what my roommate.
That's
That
true.
we have a
Okay.
spoiler card.
So yeah, we do have a spoiler card. I have not received the physical card yet. I imagine that the hurricane in New Zealand is probably making it harder for that card to get here. But I do know what the card is, and I think it's a fun one. I think it's pretty cool. I think you can do some. I've gone on a total roller coaster with this card. I thought it was busted. I thought it was terrible, and now I think it's just like pretty solid. But I'm excited to share it with everyone.
I know when you first showed it to me, you were really excited, and I was reading this card while you were typing out how excited you were. I was like, "Is this that good that you're talking about it?" I feel like you're misreading this card, and I have a feeling you did misread this card, right?
I don't think I misread the card. I just thought it would be more powerful than it was. And then then I like went through all the scenarios with the card. I'm like, okay, maybe it's not as busted as I thought. But then after I thought about it more, I still think it's pretty solid. So
Yeah, this card is like good. This card is definitely good. I
it
just
will
like,
see play in at least one deck. I'm fairly confident.
yeah, it definitely will. So yeah, we will. I don't know how much we're gonna talk about. I don't think we're gonna talk about it too much here, but we will have a video on YouTube. It's mostly gonna be a short, right?
Yeah, it's going to be a YouTube short on March 5th. And so keep your eyes out for that. We'll post when it's up, and we'll probably have the, what do you call it? The You'll be able to see when the premiere is launching on YouTube. You'll have that like little preview available. We'll get that up in the next little while for you, so
Yeah.
you'll know that
Honestly,
it's
I could
coming.
start making the. I should start just making like a, what is it called, a thumbnail.
Yeah,
Yeah, I can do that. I made one last time. I think people like that one. I should start doing that. Okay, I think that's about it.
yeah. Thanks for listening. Have a good evening.
Yeah. Good night, everyone.